So we'll call this evening's regular board meeting of Monday, September the 12th to order at 6:01. And I'd like to acknowledge that today's meeting is being held within the traditional territory of and Treaty 8. Can I have a mover and a seconder? Aaron and Bill. Are there any additions to the agenda? No additions? All in favor then? Okay, the agenda is there. And we'll start off tonight with our auditor from KPMG. Do you want to introduce?
Yes, this is Corey I'm going to say it wrong, maybe Naftali. Did I say it correctly? From KPMG, and he will be presenting the financial statements and his findings. So for the 21-22 financial statements.
Great. Thank you so much for having me. And I'm just going to present my screen. All right. So everybody can see this? I think that is a yes.
Yes.
So happy to be here. Happy to present the financial statement presentation for the school district number 60. And would like to thank Angela and the finance team at the district and the Board of Education for their continued support. And happy to be here tonight virtually. So I'll take us through a little bit of a discussion over the auditor's report, do a quick financial statement review, and then talk about some of the notes to the financial statements, and then happy to take any questions should there be any. So our auditor's report, so we do issue a compliance report on the financial statements from statement 1 through the notes of the financial statements. And we call it a compliance report because it's in accordance with public sector accounting standards. However, there are some exceptions that are required by the province's Budget and Transparency Accountability Act. The type of report that we plan on issuing will be a clean audit report. Our report stays in draft until the financial statements are approved by the board, at which time we do anticipate that we will be issuing a clean audit opinion, which means we believe the financial statements are a materially fair and accurate representation of the financial position and operations for the year. So moving into the financial statements and some of the numbers. So the school district prepares its financial statements as of June 30th, 2022. And as of that date, the assets on the school district's statement of financial position are as follows. So there was cash and cash equivalents of $13.6 million, accounts receivable, so amounts owing from government or other parties of $1.7 million, inventories that are available to be resold of $116,000, prepaid expenses, so these are services that have been paid in advance of $375,000, and then tangible capital assets, which represents the physical assets of the district, so the sites, the buildings, the furniture, the equipment, and technology of the school district of $135.8 million. And we can see the kind of the notable changes. The cash is down a little bit, but you'll see the receivables are up, the payables are also down. So really from a working capital perspective, fairly consistent year over year. And then the tangible capital assets are down a little bit as the amortization or the depreciation of those assets over their useful lives is in excess of the additions that were made during the year. Moving into those receivable balances, so that $1.7 million is broken out from amounts owed from the Ministry of Education, other province ministries, and then the First Nations of $310,000. So as a total, that $1.7 million is up from just the $600,000 that was there last year. When we look at the tangible capital assets, so this is kind of a long list of the various categories of assets that the district holds. So we can see some of the notable changes there in the buildings account. So there were improvements to North Peace Secondary HVAC, exterior walls for Bert Ambrose, Then there's the furniture and equipment. So there's annual additions there, $1.2 million, bringing that amount to $7 million from 5.7. And then there were, would have included some of the playground equipment that was purchased, and then some computers and facility upgrades that were made throughout the year. So that's what brings that total tangible capital asset balance of $135.8 million. So it's made up of all of these various categories. Less, this is the total amortization expense that's been recognized over the life of those assets. Moving down to the liabilities. So these are the amounts that we're owing as of June 30th, 2022. So you can see accounts payable and accrued liabilities, as I noted, is down a little bit, $6.3 million compared to $8.4 million. Unearned revenue, which would be advanced tuition, $312,000 compared to $400,000 in the previous year. Employee future benefits. So these are post-retirement benefits that are accrued for certain employees that are have those included within their agreements. $1.1 million, giving total liabilities before deferred revenue and deferred capital revenue of $7.8 million. So a decrease from $9.8 million in the previous year. When we do look at those deferred revenues, so these are amounts that have been received for programs that have yet to be delivered. So there's about $3 million of those programs at the end of this year. There's about $3.1 million in the previous year. So a little bit more ability on the district's behalf to utilize that funding and to deliver those programs, and the deferred balance reflects that. And then the deferred capital revenue. So this represents capital funding that's been provided specifically for purchasing assets. So this will decrease and amortize into revenue over the useful life of the assets that it was used to purchase. So that's decreased alongside the balance of tangible capital assets, which you would have seen on the previous pages. So total deferred revenues was $111.2 million. When we look at the operations, so this is the operations from July 1st, 2022 or 2021 to June 30th, 2022. So we've got three columns here. On the left, we've got the budget that was set by the board for 2022. In the middle, you've got the actual results for the year. And then on the right, you've got the actual results for the previous year. And you can see those say restated. And the only reason those say restated is because the Ministry of Education provided a new policy for amortizing capital assets. And when the district adopted that policy, it went and adopted the policy for the previous year as well as the current year. So small changes, all related to the capital assets and that change in policy, which was a direction given from the Ministry of Education. So overall, there was budgeted revenues of $85.4 million. So the budgeted revenues were exceeded, and total revenues experienced were $86 million in the current year compared to just under $85 million in the previous year. There were budgeted expenses of $85.9 million. Actual expenses came in just under $85 million. And that's compared to last year's expenses of $83 million. So you can see that the board had budgeted a deficit for the year of $520,000 to spend down some of its surpluses. However, the actual amounts that came in was a surplus of just over $1 million, which is less than last year's surplus of $1.9 million. And we'll see how that will impact the total accumulated surplus balances at the end of the year. So when you break that or $1.1 million accumulated surplus for the year down into the various funds, so the operations had $1.1 million surplus and the capital fund had a very small deficit. So at the end of the year, the surpluses that were in existence at the district were $4.6 million in the operating fund and $28 million in the capital fund. So the total accumulated surplus is $32.6 million, but it's important to remember that a majority of that surplus is invested in capital assets and represented within that capital fund balance. So $28 million is really locked up in the assets that are schools and furniture and equipment there to provide education to the district. And there's only $4.6 million within operations that's being carried forward or available for use from an operating perspective for the district going forward. The financial statements are about 40 pages, and they include a number of significant accounting policies that are used to generate all of those numbers that I've just presented. So if there are any questions on the full set of financial statements or any of the notes or disclosure, I'm happy to take those as well. This presentation has really just been a summary of those financial statements and just to provide a high-level overview of the financial statements. So happy to take any questions at this point. I'll stop sharing my screen so I can see everybody.
Any questions?
I guess as we're asking,
Yeah.
although maybe it would be an Angela question, I don't know. So what was the difference? I mean, we had a budget for the revenue, and I mean, it's not just, the actual is not just a couple of dollars. What is the difference? Did we get extra ground?
Yeah, so what we've got in our file, and I'll let Angela kind of add to this, but essentially a lot of a portion of the difference between the budget would have been from school generated funds. So I think there was an anticipation that funds being generated at schools were going to be kind of more similar to COVID levels than they were to normal levels. So now that there are more programming going on at schools, when a school generates or collects money, it has a revenue and then an equal offsetting expense. So really that's a portion of the unanticipated budget, because really the majority of the difference was seen in the kind of other revenue line items. So it wasn't from grant funding. And Angela, you might be able to do a better job of explaining that, but that's kind of what we had in our file.
Yeah,
Other questions? So I'm just going to confirm that generally speaking, you were happy with what you found and it's a clean audit.
Yeah, and that's why we're able to give a clean audit opinion. Yeah.
Okay. What? How are we making you sweat? You got too many
Well, that's
layers
easy.
on. Okay. So, do we need a motion to accept the auditor's report?
Yes.
I have a motion moved by Bill, seconded by Aaron, that we accept the auditor's report as presented. Calling the question, all in favor? Thank you.
Can I motion that Aaron or Angela stop sweating?
Any further discussion? And do we need a motion to do the letter to appoint them for the next year?
That comes later. Yeah.
Okay, just
Thank you.
wanting to make sure I do the right thing. All right,
Great. Well, thank you very much for having me, and have a good night.
good night.
Thank you, Corey.
Bye-bye.
All right, trustee inputs and celebrations, trustee Campbell.
I had a great summer. I had all 4 of my daughters and their families together for the first time in
Wow.
a few years. And of course, I haven't done anything school related because I've just gone back. So, and I'm looking forward to the next year.
Trustee Evans, are we celebrating work on your doctorate? How are you doing?
Oh my God. No, not celebrate that.
Hey, just checking.
Yeah, that's like pulling teeth in without any, lidocaine or whatever that stuff's called that they give you. Yeah, no, it's good. I mean, I was working all summer and had the kids visiting for a bit, and it was too hot for them. Yeah, just lots of work work, but it's good and I'm enjoying it. I'm finally settling in and, I'm here for a little bit longer and see how it goes. And yeah, got a few more tattoos, 15 now total. So I don't know why I do it because they hurt, but hey.
Chair Lehman.
Huh?
Busy summer here too, and I did attend the new teacher orientation. That was actually fun. You can go on a little bus tour afterwards and you get little tidbit nuggets of knowledge from the city, so it was good, and I think the teachers appreciate it. And I have to say the orientation part itself, there is a lot of information packed into that, which is good.
Good clarification from the staff. Trustee Scott Moncrief.
A great summer. Just a second, go to my notes. I talked to all my schools today. Upper Pine, is it Mrs. Palma? Yeah. She is incredibly grateful for the school she ended up with. She's loving it. Talked to Preston too. I don't know what was happening 5 years ago, but they have 2 kindergarten classes this year. That's there's a bubble coming. So.
Dave, if you don't know what was happening 5 years ago, I don't know what to say.
Beaver Creek, everything's good. They have some issues with busing, but we're trying to sort through that. Upper Halfway, they're down a lot. A lot of the Russian kids have gone to homeschooling, which is a bit of concern. 101 needs our help. I hope you're all aware there's teachers coming. Yep. They have no EAs, no bus drivers. They've got Ukrainian kids. There's no English, and one with handicaps, I think. They really do need some help. So, yeah. And listening to that audit sounds like a juggling act with or something.
Trustee Snow.
Summer was okay. My knee's getting better, so that's good. I found a doctor and it's coming along. I do work over the summer, so didn't have a lot of time off. Since school's been back, I've been busy. I've been out to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different schools, some of them twice. Met with the pack at one school. Keep busy.
I had a good summer family-wise, holiday-wise. I did spend a fair amount of time over the summer on the BCSDA final climate committee working group report, and the draft will go to the BCSDA at their meeting this week, and then we'll see what they do with the draft. I did do a Zoom meeting with the Minister of Education August 25th, and that was with regards to the affordability fund, and I sent you that information. I did have a board chair call on September 8th. There wasn't a lot of substance to it, but there's a couple of things I will forward to you. I went to, on behalf of the district, I went to the Northern Lights College Welcome Fest and the hospital 10-year celebration. And I've confirmed with Michelle that I will go to the museum with both her and Margaret on the 5th of October to carry on with the concept of that history project. And I've reached out to school administration, and I'll start some visits in schools next week. So it's going on for me. Let's take a look at item 5 on our agenda, the minutes of the regular board meeting of June 20th. And that's pages 6 to 13 in the agenda package. I'll give you a second to have a go at them. have a mover and a seconder for those minutes? Moved by David, seconded by Aaron. Are there any errors or omissions? All in favor then? Now, business arising out of those minutes. See, there's a couple. One of the action items was around the presentation from Northern Lights, not Northern Lights, Northern Cultural Center regarding the creative hub, but I'm sure that with summer, nothing's happened on that. It's not the time. Is there any other items? Because I'm not finding my action. Okay. So we've got a few things unfinished. On the action items. Some of them. It's all audit committee update, finance consultation standing committee, research work, funding percentage expenditures on comparison to like districts, and facilities review, FIC update. But those are all things to come. They're still in the unfinished business, but we know that they are coming. Any other business arising from those minutes? Madeline?
I just have a question on the finance update. It says about ending up with less Alberta students. That just triggered the question of, I kind of heard a rumor that Alberta students, because it wasn't that they kind of were done, just grandfathered that they can their new ones come back in?
Yes.
Okay, so it is.
So the new ones can come back in with funding?
The province of the Ministry of Education Alberta is supporting the students coming to our district.
Great. So moving on now to item number 6, approval of the excerpts of the regular boarding meeting of May the 24th, which is page 14 in your package. Can I have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Madeline, seconded by Ida. All in favor? Okay. Moving on. I just lost my agenda. Another flip pages. Announcements and reminders. When we look at a very busy calendar that's coming up, is there any other additions or changes to the dates that we have listed here? There was some talk about a day of mourning for Queen Elizabeth that was going to be called by the Prime Minister, but I haven't heard anything further about that. Have you?
Question, neither have I.
Okay.
All I've heard is that there will be an update in terms of, right now, we know that the flag will be raised again the evening of the 18th of September following this service.
Okay. Bill? Sorry, then I.
Go ahead, Bill. So the 30th of September, what is going on that day for the schools?
It's a stat holiday.
Okay. But my understanding, there's still, schools are open.
No,
No, sorry, the students aren't there, but the staff's there.
no.
It's not an NID day, it's a
Staff
staff
holiday.
holiday.
Okay.
So if you start, starting to look at some of the schools' newsletters and things, they'll be doing all their Orange Shirt Day and Truth and Reconciliation activities before that day. And they're off And probably like last year, you and I went to that one day in the park. That will be,
Yeah, no, I get that. I had some staff members actually tell me that they were working that day. So I was like, what?
Not true.
Yeah, awesome.
Ida?
I just have a question about the Halfway First Nation
Mhm.
open house. Do we know if anyone's going to attend that?
Yeah, so I've got that in my, I've got that to ask in my report.
Oh, okay,
To nail down some specific dates for that. Thank you though.
Okay.
Because I will sort of need to know and
Yeah.
confirm with Carlene.
okay, thank you.
all right. No other things. Oh, actually, we do. Sorry, MPAA meeting. The first one for the MPAA, please. I thought I had it on calendar. Yeah. I think it's going to,
Yeah, it's on here.
That's what it says.
it's on there. Okay, sorry, I just couldn't see it.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Just me being blind. Hold it out further. Okay.
So next Monday?
Right. Moving on to a minor capital plan. Angela.
Sorry. A lot of paper here, and I had it tagged and I pulled my pen out. Here we go. So this is our presentation for the minor capital plan. I worked with transportation and facilities on this. As you can see, we're asking for 3 new buses because ours are getting worn out. They're not up to the kilometers that the ministry asks, but they do get a lot of wear and tear on the country roads. So when we send these in, we send in the service reports as well as pictures of the roads that they drive on, as well as pictures of the buses. And then as for facilities, we didn't take on a lot of large projects because we are in the process of building the gym at Upper Halfway. And so we took, we're hoping to replace the HVAC system at Hudson Hope. It's original to the school in 1996, and they're can't find parts and having some issues there. So that comes in at 1.8 million. And then for Central School and Robert Ogilvie, we have an ask to replace the HVAC controls. Again, moving from Honeywell to Delta, as the current controls are becoming obsolete and we can't get parts for them. And then we're going to have a new gym at Upper Halfway. We may as well do some upgrades to the exterior of the building, and hopefully the interior as well, changing the flooring, windows, and yeah, just giving the old building a match to the new gym. So this is the minor capital plan that we're putting forward for 23-24. And I'm open to questions.
Was one of the things for Upper Halfway, playground equipment?
Yeah, the playground equipment was on there for last year, and we couldn't put it in because there's a gym getting built next to it, and it would be, we just asked for it to be extended to this year. So it's not on this plan, but the funding is in place right now.
And the old stuff still is there, right?
The old stuff is still, everything is still as is.
Okay. When last time I was there, they had a fear that they would take it away and it wouldn't get replaced until.
Oh,
So I wasn't sure. Yeah, thanks.
we'll try not to do that.
Any other questions for Angela related to this? Okay. Moving on then to senior staff reports, the superintendent's report, which is pages 15 to 16 in your package.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Leah, do we need a motion for the capital
Yes, you're right.
Okay, thanks, David. Moved by David, seconded by Bill, that we move forward with the annual capital plan as presented.
Sorry, Bill, David and Bill. Sorry.
Someday I'll know, maybe. All right. Moving on to Stephen's report.
Okay, number of items here to present. First of all, the online report for around the district. The link here is to the full framework plan. It's about the big long one, the 34-page one there. And under intellectual development, as promised, I've shared some slides that the Ministry of Education presented in the summer in terms of some of their priorities for the upcoming year. And with our new Deputy Minister, Christina Zatrek. So feel free to scroll through there and see some of the pieces of information that they presented. Also, as I mentioned, there is the framework plan. It's an ongoing living document, and this is our updated version for the 2022-23 school year, and that will come up later in my report in terms of the summary that we'd like to send to the ministry along with that addendum of data as per their timelines. Also, there is just a neat slide created by Principal Kathy Scheck, and I encourage you and the public to click on it because it's very interactive. So she sends out to all the parents, and when you click on the book, it takes you to the video of the reading of the book, as well as a number of other resources. So it's a pretty neat app that she uses programmed for those interactive slides. Under human and social development, this went out, this communication piece went out about a week and a half before school started, and it was just information for parents in terms of, yeah, it's coming. What's the best way to prepare our kids to, is that too bright there? Help prepare kids to come back to school. The Student Affordability Fund, as you heard, was a recent announcement just prior to school starting up, and so there's information there on the news release and what the ministry has presented. And the funding for School District 60 is approximately $680,000, and we're working through the process around our district to allocate that. Under early learning, the board will remember most districts have received an annual funding of $175,000 to provide leadership capacity and to put that into place for early learning and childcare programs and to consolidate all of those programs together. And so we've done that here. We have a district principal of early learning and childcare with Tracy LaRiviere. Under her, we have staff, 2 managers that oversee our ECE staff and programming in both licensed and unlicensed spaces. And of course, as you know then, as the Ministry of Education and Childcare, we'll be continuing to look at opportunities and need around our region where we can add spaces and programs on school property. And so that will be ongoing around the province. Seamless Day, we discussed this previously. We finally put together a report here on the Seamless Day K in Taylor. Really good feedback and information. Some of it was challenging, some of it went really well, but Tracy LaRiviere put together this report here and we'll be sending that not only to the ministry, but it's here as well. And I have shared that with the Taylor Council for their upcoming meeting as well. So please have a read through there. It just gives you a summary. And it's really well done in terms of the numbers and our delivery, what we learned, some examples from the kids, and we'll be continuing that next year. Under career skill and international, really a robust number of international and the regular international programs, about 55 FTE, which is pretty much all we can handle as a district. We don't want to go more than that, because in terms of host families and the staffing that we have, so it's really positive. A bit of a correction there, I'll fix it later. We have 22 refugee students, 20 of them from Ukraine, 2 from other countries. And they are fully funded students, but so they'll count in our 1701 count. And so we didn't think there would be that many, but we're starting to see that arrival of Ukrainian students in SD60 as well, which is terrific. Just under human resources here, I had alluded to this in the spring, and we had, gosh, I think it was 50+ teachers going through Pro-D the week before school started here in the DDC in the boardroom on doing planning and a number of other workshops. So it was very well attended and very much appreciated, with a focus on planning, very practical in terms of heading into the school year. The big thing is, as Trustee Snow alluded to, is the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, which is a stat holiday on Friday, September 30th. And most importantly, Truth and Reconciliation goes on all the time, all year long, in different forms. And so there are those special events, but there's also the curriculum, there's the work that we do around the LEAs, there's our work with the Indigenous Education Council, and that's a really robust program. And finally, please take the time to look through some fun celebrations, mostly from last June. So of course they were past the time we had the board meeting, and so just an update of some of the fun things that happened at around the district at the end of the school year. Other items in my report that don't need pulled out, I've attached the Camp Cameron report just on some of the activities in the last few months, so trustees and the public are welcome to look through that. I've attached the Taylor Seamus League Kindergarten as a separate report as well, just so you have that here in paper. And that is my report, and I'll be asking for items 4, 5, 6, and 7 to be pulled out. Helen, for a motion. Item 4 is that summary report that we send to the ministry there. It's the new kind of template. They made it easier, so there's some consistency, I think, around the province. So we filled in that summary report along with the data addendum. Then I'll be asking for approval for community coaches, for the posts of responsibility, and for the out-of-district sports and field trips. And that is my report. And I failed to mention item 1, which is our standing activity report for each other.
So let's look at the things. Can I have a motion to accept Stephen's report? Moved by Bill, seconded by David. We've got some items that we'll pull out for motions after discussion. Discussion related to Stephen's report, questions related to Stephen's report. Bill.
So HR wise, back up to 1 second. But we're not to sound totally negative, but we're kind of hurting. Right? One of the questions I had last week for the agenda meeting was, how many LOPs do we have right now?
Yeah, so and I have further sort of more specific information on that for in camera as well, but we have currently 16.21 FTE letters of permission.
16?
Yeah. And so we had about 9, I believe, last year, so it's almost double the number from last year. We currently have about, we've actually, every day is different, eh? When they're filling it every day here, but we have approximately 5 full-time and 7 part-time positions still looking for. Some of those, well, most of those actually are non-enrolling positions. And the primary ones, the part-time ones are sort of little bits and bobs that are left over after they fill the position, some of the prep ones. On our QP side, most of the positions posted, there are 24 part-time, including 4 bus drivers. This is the season where the principals start to look at where the needs are as the kids are coming in and start to post a lot of those hirings. But it looks like we have about 7 more full-time LOPs than we had last year.
And when it comes to TOCs,
right?
we have some.
Yeah.
Do we have many?
We need more.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, is it way less than last year right now?
It's less. I'm not sure how much less. It's not hugely different, Bill, but the hiring situation is as tight as I've seen it in 25 years. And we're doing fairly well compared to most northern districts, but it is as tight and as challenging as our HR department has ever seen.
Oh, no, it's not just us for sure, and
No.
like I said, I've been up to 5 different schools, and 1, 2, 3, I think 3 or 4 at least, all have LOPs in them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Kind of thing, like,
Yeah.
so we just kind of like, whoa.
Well, and you know, Trustee Madeline was there for the orientation, and it was interesting because there were 3 or 4 letters of permission there. Some of our former students who have degrees, they're local. And there's, the silver lining is that there's this potential and interest to develop, you know, our local people and who can then do education certification while they're working. And so it was interesting to see some of those there that night.
I don't mean to sound negative, I'm just.
Oh, no, it's not. I'm not here to say that it's all
Yeah.
good either.
No, I just.
It's as tight as I've seen it in 26 years, actually.
Ida?
Yeah, Stephen, I just want to touch on, thank you for the kindergarten, project.
Sorry it took so long.
But I also would like to thank you for making sure that you let the District of Taylor Council have the report, because some people might not be aware of. They actually helped us get some of the donations that helped the parents, so they didn't have to have the expense. So I really appreciate that you included the council as well in the report.
Yeah, and I've sent them a letter as well. And on the summary report, I've made sure it's included that with the support of the District of Taylor as well. And I've sent them a letter along with the report to Lisa Ford, and she's going to bring it forward to the open meeting at their next meeting.
That's great, thanks. Because I had gotten a few.
Yeah, of course,
inquiries about it now.
as we would expect. So again, sorry it took so long, and Tracy actually put some finishing touches on the information.
No,
here
I
just a
read
couple
it, it
weeks
was,
before.
it was great.
Okay. Any other questions related to that? And I have a motion to approve the Fessel report and the data addendum for the ministry submitted. Moved by Aaron, second by Ida. Any questions related to these documents? Calling the question then, all in favor? And if you could take a look at your community coaches, we've listed those in the motion to approve the community coaches. And then a mover to approve the community coaches, moved by David, seconded by Aaron. Any questions for Stephen?
Stephen, we have community coaches. Okay, they all need a sponsor from the school district, right?
Yes.
Okay.
What that means or how that plays out could vary, but sorry, what's the?
I'm just making sure that we all, like, yeah, we have the team, we have a coach.
Yeah.
But without the sponsor in the school district, they don't go anywhere.
Correct.
Do we have those all
Yes.
set?
Yeah, they can't
Volunteers for them
travel.
all.
That's correct.
I mean, they can't, unless there's a school board staff member, they can't go on the trip.
Are you talking about elementary or secondary? Because it can vary a little bit.
I know
Like when
secondary,
elementary
they can.
has a game, for example, it can be under the supervision of the principal of the school.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Okay. And there's always a staff,
Yeah,
a
exactly.
district person involved in the supervision of those activities.
But is it the same with the elementary? Like Ambrose here has some community coaches. So that community coach, do they have to have an Ambrose staff member present too?
Well, when they're
Or,
either in Ambrose or they're.
or a school board staff member, I should reframe it better.
Yeah, can I get back to you on that and find out specifically, because.
Policy does say
Yeah.
that there needs to be a staff
Yeah.
sponsor.
Yeah,
Just wondering, like, if they all, like, because we're making sure that these guys can be community coaches.
Yeah.
But do they have a partner beside them? Is what I'm trying to do.
that is the
And that is the
expectation, right?
expectation. Now, there's some discretion that takes place depending on the situation.
And then that's why I need to just leave a little bit of wiggle room there in the sense that if the Ambrose team goes to Ann Roberts Young to play a league game, they're under the supervision of district personnel.
Yeah.
Within the school site and the principal. So I'm not sure if 100% of the time, Bert Ambrose also has a different teacher traveling with that coach to Ann Roberts Young to sit on the bench. Often there is.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that we've accommodated when the district personnel can supervise that situation. Does that
Yes.
make sense?
Yeah, because the issue would be more with the older ones,
They
So
have
if
to
they-
have a
if they
person
were
that
away-
travels. Yeah.
okay? And you call that team and say, I got questions for you. Is that person, I'm assuming it's that person you talk to. You don't talk to the coach.
Yeah, the travel
You
teams
talk
have
to
to
the-
have a district person travel with them, yes.
Okay,
And I think that one of the things you'll see is when they go and look at the out-of-district sports field trips, we have who the chaperones are and who's going with them on all of those. We don't necessarily look at that for in-town travel.
Yeah, that's the distinction I'm trying to make here, yeah.
Right, so can I have a motion to approve the coaches? I actually did that already, calling the question. All in favor? Right. And now we'll take a look at out-of-district field trips. What posters? Let's do the out-of-district field trips right now, because it kind of goes with the coaches a little bit. And then we'll see if there's next one. So can I have a mover and a seconder to set the out-of-district field? Moved by David, second by Ida. Any questions before Stephen, any discussion of this?
We're doing the field trips right now?
Yeah, the out-of-district sports and field trips, yeah.
Well, I mean, just seeing that we just talked about that. And I don't have a problem with it. The Clearview one, I mean, how deep down do you go? Will probably, if you accepted, obviously are we ever gonna get an update on who is actually coach, chaperone or not? Because it's not on here.
Sure. That's what we get the first-
Like, I mean,
Sometimes they don't necessarily know at this point.
no, it doesn't say, I get that, I get that. So this is just kind of obviously an overall broad acceptance of it,
It's a
but.
broad exception, and what you're asking, I think, if I can rephrase it, is there a double check so that when these teams are on the road, somebody at this level knows who's with them and that they meet the criteria?
They are intended to be more specific than not, but if there are gaps in here, we can absolutely come back if we're still looking for a coach or who the chaperone will be for sure.
yeah, somebody, i.e. you, the principal, I think has to know in case something goes south.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I mean, just a broad thing like that, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a problem with it as long as we know that.
So which ones specifically need to be highlighted as far as
Well-
needing more, the
Clearview,
was the Clearview one?
Clearview doesn't have any information about who the coach is. There's no names or of chaperones and coaches on any of the Clearview stuff.
Oh, I see, okay, I get it, yeah.
It says parent driven.
Yeah, that's just always like that, just because we don't get a buff for that,
Yeah, yeah.
Which is fine, but you still need a
an abstract.
school board person.
So Clearview's missing information, we will come back to you with that.
We have a pretty good idea, but
No, but it's,
Things can change.
it's necessary. Yeah, thank you.
Trust me, we want them to play.
Oh, yeah,
It's
well, I
not
know.
the-
Well, and I think they've reached out ahead and they've looked to what they're
Mhm.
going to be doing in the
Yeah.
spring and things like that, but there's some more detail
For sure.
that needs to come closer to the time of the trip.
That's the one here in yellow. Third page, last one. Who's that? Basketball tournament, boys, girls, grade 8, grade 9.
Is that Dr. Kearney?
That one?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's Dr. Kearney.
Yeah, it says to be determined.
Yeah.
For the last part.
We can maybe diarize like halfway through the year, because the administrators are doing their best just to.
To let us know.
Dates and,
Yeah, I mean, and that,
but let's, so
It's Jennifer,
part of it
too.
is our system is the problem of trying to know all the details right now. So can we take a look at that as a
Yeah.
board and maybe, maybe we do this twice a year at least, where we do fall, right? And then we
At
do.
least, but then there
right?
are things that come up throughout the year.
Beginning of each semester.
Yeah, but we can
Maybe.
probably fix a few things right off the bat by waiting until January to look at this, all the spring stuff.
And I mean, I just bring it up because I know last year, there were quite a few that we approved after the fact.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think it's okay to look at how can we improve it.
Oh, for
And
sure.
I get it, there's always last minute stuff, I get that, but as a whole, just,
If we can reduce the number of the
Mhm.
unknowns, and as you know, Madeline, there'll always be the one or two where that'll come up and you need your flexibility on those. But Leah, if we can diarize to bring this back to Sharon around making this at least twice a year to capture more of the details for the ones later
Or
on.
even by term.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
So, if your planning session.
Yeah. Term, you mean
Well, you think about,
Semester
there's
or
3
semester.
chunks to your elementary school.
for elementary, yeah.
Yeah.
Normally the out of district ones would be,
The
the
high school, which is semester, and that's at least twice a year.
Good, thank you.
Okay, calling the question then, all in favor? Moving on to posts of responsibility. Can I have a mover and a seconder for this? Moved by Aaron, seconded by David. Discussion and questions for Stephen? Stephen, I wanted to just clarify. These people have a 1.0 FTE, but it's not all post of responsibility. The post of responsibility is just, isn't it?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Where's,
well, there's two that have 2.5 or 0.5.
It varies, the school gets an allocation, sometimes they split them between people and those sorts of things. If they're teaching full-time and then one of their blocks, for example, would be bought out would be provided as a post responsibility, but they receive a stipend as well, right? Even if,
But when we presented it this way last year, we had some people that assumed that that meant that there was a person 1.0.
good clarification.
Responsibility.
No,
I'm just clarifying that.
no,
it's
mostly they're
not-
just full-time teachers
They're
and they have this added responsibility for which they're compensated.
and
The
probably
amount,
see one district band person there.
Okay,
So Dave, what's his name, Dave?
yeah, David Price, yeah.
And Sabrina,
Mhm.
are they not?
Nope,
Perfect.
because Sandra Gunn has the district responsibility
Okay.
around the band program, yeah.
Okay.
any other questions before I call the question? Right, calling the question, all in favor of that? And we're moving on to the secretary treasurer's report.
Okay, thank you, Helen. We don't actually need an approval for the surplus appropriation because once we pass the financial statements, the surplus appropriation is in there already. So we could call this surplus appropriation review. So I gave you the attachment of what we sat down as a senior team and we allocated out what we are putting the accumulated surplus of 4,616,671 towards. I can go through it if you like, or I can open myself, or, sorry, I'm doing this wrong.
That's okay.
So that is the one, and then there's the HR support staff summary, and that is my report.
Can I have a mover and a seconder for Angela's report, please? Moved by Aaron, seconded by David. Starting first with the surplus appropriation approval. Any questions related to that? Madeline?
My memory is not good. Is this kind of the amount that we usually see?
The 4.6.
Yeah.
It is on the financial statement. It's up, I believe it's one.
No, but the amount, like, is that a usually high one? Is that right in there? I said my memory is not great.
With the district?
Yeah.
I could go back and give you the history of it. I know that we increased this year by the what, I have 1.1 million roughly, so we went up. Our operating budget came in at a surplus. So
Yeah.
we are higher than we were last year or the year before. So we're trying to, there's reasons for that. For example, you can see we have carry forwards from unspent money for 246,000. There is early mentorship money that is included in this that is not ours to spend. It is the PRNTA's. And then we have our education initiatives. And then we have some equipment purchases that didn't happen last year that we're going to push through this year to the tune of about 370,000. It is higher than last year. We're hoping to, I don't necessarily, the contingency reserve is all we want to have in place. That's 2.5% of the revenue, but I don't know if I'm answering your question. I don't have the historic numbers.
It's okay. Like, I guess, like, it's connected with the question is, do we ever worry? Because I know from Corey's presentation, it said, yes, there were some funds that weren't spent. Is there ever a danger of, let's say, all of a sudden you don't get more money just because you haven't spent it?
Well, that's why they brought, that's a great question. That is why they brought this accumulated surplus policy in. So when districts are asking for money, they look at the surplus and say, you aren't spending the money we're giving you. So definitely there is I don't know how long it will take them to implement that. When I look at our surplus versus other district surpluses, it seems high for ours, but it's quite low compared to other districts. But that's a great point. That's why they put that policy in place, and I believe they will be watching districts closer. So
But our contingency, go ahead, Stephen.
So it's a great question and a great conversation. The 4.6 is essentially all allocated. So it's not out of line in terms of the district our size and the percentage of our budget that we're talking about. So that's your first kind of question, I think. Secondly, they're allocated, like the contingency fund, for example, at 2.5% will always show up as part of our surplus. But as you pointed out as a board, we need to be very careful that we're keeping the full 2.5% because of the increased costs of fuel and everything else that we're anticipating this coming year. So it's all allocated.
And I know that when we were doing getting ready for the Financial Standing Committee presentation, we talked about, is 2.5 really enough? Because I think the buffer the ministry is suggesting is a little higher than that. And when you look at the hit that we took in the increase of fuel last year, that might be a discussion for the future is, do we want it to be a little bit more than 2.5? That was one of those carryover conversations. Now, some of this right now, my assumption is that when district staff is bringing it to us laid out like this, some of the decisions in here reflect some of those conversations that occurred in June with staff around where needs were. I think we initially made a 3-year commitment to math and literacy. We're at the end of that 3 years now, aren't we?
Yeah, except, yes, and some of it was unable to be spent because of a lack of TOCs, and so we're extending that, just to be able to commit to what we said we were gonna do in that programming.
And assess the impact of it, because with COVID, they had some execution issues with the 2 initiatives.
But that's an important thing for us to know, because in my head, I'm carrying the concept that we committed to this for 3 years.
Yeah, and if you remember correct, like all the surplus, this has been a big topic that BCSTA also has been working on and talking about. But then when COVID hit, it kind of didn't balance out because there was so many unknowns. So I'm sure that this surplus, but you're right, Madeline, there is talk about if we have too high of a surplus, that they will claw it back.
If I can, Hill, we are clearly not in that position in our district. We have one of the lower ones, as Angela pointed out. The other piece for the understanding, as we've talked about before, one of our new models is to push a lot of that surplus back to the schools in the form of the Learning Support Fund. And so we have just increased, for example, that amount when we found out we had some extra flexibility back into that fund that goes out to the schools.
So I had a question about the SEL worker, and it partly comes out of conversation about that student affordability grant. And there was a lot of concern that if we're doing something as a one-time initiative, we're really clear about it.
Yeah, good point.
Because then there becomes an expectation. So this SEL worker is that over and above what we would typically have, with the concept that as we come out of COVID and things like that this year, that position might not be there.
To be honest with you, there are a few positions like that in a sense with learning services where we always hope we have the room. And we usually do. It's been rare. It's not that we've ever had to cut the positions, but it has to be a year-by-year basis, because if it came down to it, you as a board would have to say, sorry, there's not enough room for money to have those positions. We've been able to carry them all along so far, but you're absolutely right. It is on a one-year basis, one by one.
And that was discussed, and this is just an additional worker was needed to kind of fulfill the vision of what they're trying to execute at the school level.
This is what we're reporting to our public, and we have this conversation now so that there's a record of it. But it's important that that is understood, that this is not a long-term commitment. And having the conversation where you've just clarified that you've extended some of those educational initiatives because of COVID. If I was just Joe citizen reading this, we've just had some really important conversation that clarifies some of those things. And whether a one-page summary or just a paragraph clarifying that this accumulated surplus is a carryover of some funds and existing commitments that couldn't be met due to COVID. I think is important. Yeah, is an important understanding. Like the equipment replacement, I can't remember even what pieces of equipment we talked about perhaps needing. I know we had one vehicle that got written off in the spring, but I think there's a little bit more information that we need to capture to understand what's presented here. Okay.
you mean more like granular, other than just equipment replacement, you would like to know?
Is this one time?
This is one time.
Yes.
'cause
So
These
some of
funds may
these,
not be here next
Yeah.
year.
so that some of it is a one-time commitment and a little bit more. I understand the rationale for some of it. I know that we got specific funding for early career mentorship that is the PRNTA will go through and will control, but I know that, but is it explained anywhere else? Like, you know, you have the knowledge, you have it. I'm just thinking about in points of communication with the public, is there a not extensive, but a few explanatory notes
Sure.
about this
Sure.
that we should consider?
Just in front of you.
So that I was getting at
Okay.
in a roundabout way. All right, so we've had our discussion. All in favor of accepting the secretary treasurer's report? Oh, sorry, go ahead, Bill, with your question.
On the HR side, Angela,
Yep.
there's postings for bus drivers up.
Yes.
Sorry.
But when you look at the bus routes, it says they're all running, other than the half of one for 101.
Yes, we have casuals that are in place.
It is casual as a
Yeah.
place for them? Okay. So,
And I would like to give a little shout out to Cindy that she has not had a route down. The 101 route, we're trying to find somebody for that still.
that's it, just lack of a person?
Yeah.
Because right now it says high school only, so how do they do?
High school only is we've extended one route to just get the high school students and bring them to the high school. And then the rest there was several that were within walking distance of the school, so either their parents are driving them or they're walking. And then the ones that are outside of walking distance, we're paying the transportation stipend to.
So the kids that are going to the high school are getting driven into the high school?
Bused in, yes.
Bused in. But the part that confuses me is, we all know some of them have rather large families.
Yes.
So if they have kids at the high school and they have kids at 101 school, the kids at the high school are getting picked up,
Yes,
but the kids that go to the elementary are not getting picked up?
that's correct.
Would we have room in the bus? We don't have another bus.
We
Well,
wouldn't
okay,
have,
that was my next question.
Yes.
There's not enough room on the bus.
Yeah, it's not, we're not intentionally doing it. It's
we don't
Yeah.
have
Oh, no,
another
right.
bus driver.
Yeah.
We have for up there. So the posting is out and hopefully we get somebody. But they are still, my understanding is they're still getting to school, whether they're walking or they're using the transportation.
Yeah, no problem. Just when I looked and it said they're all running.
They are, we
And
have,
then you
we're
said
using
casuals.
casuals and yes.
Okay.
It's a bit of a dance over there right now, but just making it work.
I'm sure it's a dance.
It is.
Okay, now I'll call the question. All in favor? Moving on to item number 10, reports of the regular committee of the whole meeting. You're looking at my script, but I don't see them in the package. So this is mocked up.
Looking for the minutes?
Pardon?
There's no minutes.
There is no minutes. Okay. So, I'm taking a look at the action items on the list, and I think we did that. We did. Okay. 10 we're counting as done. Moving on to 10.2, Policy Committee. Employment-related accommodation. We have had that out there for a while. It's gone back and forth, and there has been, it was a policy that we got some feedback on. In your package, you have the policy again. David moved it the first time, so we need a seconder to the motion that the Board of Education adopt the amended policy 4022, the employment-related accommodation. It can't be David. I need a seconder, seconded by Madeline. And one of the notes that I made here, there was things not in policy that came out of discussion with our employees, such as clarity about who their landlord was and who they went and worked with. And my assumption is that the work that we said we would do there, we've done, or there's a plan to do it.
I'm not sure I understand, like,
So you
meaning
had-
if we have facilities going into.
Yeah, there was
That is
some issues that arose that were not necessarily the policy
Right.
issues, but there were some things that we needed to clear
To
up and
address, for
clean up
sure.
and address.
Yeah, it was actually a good I think there was good communication. It highlighted some items that we needed to take into consideration on the facility side. They weren't necessarily in the policy, but I think we sorted all those out.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure that had happened. Okay. Moving on to budget development, monitoring and review. Our initial mover was Ida on the motion that the Board of Education approve policy 800.1.1, budget development, monitoring and reporting for deletion. Do I have a seconder on that? Seconded now by Bill. Calling the question. All in favor? Because the whole thing's gone.
Did we adopt A?
Yeah.
Okay.
He's done.
Did we
With
vote on it though?
Do we vote? Okay, let's go back and vote. Sorry.
Yeah.
Let's go back to A and hold the vote. We did everything else. So, all in favor? All right, looking at item number C, selection of learning resources. Moved by Ida initially that the Board of Education adopt policy 3003, selection of learning resources. Is there a seconder here? Seconded by David.
Parents keep holding their hand up. so.
Oh, okay. I'll look for Erin next time. Well, I can't. 'cause she's-
Yeah, that's not-
Okay. There are some things in looking at that policy again, that I'm going to bring back to policy committee, because there's a few things in there that I think require some better clarity, but it has gone out for notice of motion, and there was a lot of things that were tidied off on it. But I will bring it for the other things I was worrying about a little bit forward at a policy committee meeting. Right? Moving on, did we call it? Yes, we did. Calling that question, all in favor on the learning resources?
So I have a question for you. If
Okay.
you're gonna bring it forward, are you thinking there'll be big changes?
I don't know.
Because, should we move it and then have to redo again?
I guess there's a couple of points of clarity in there for me, and I gave one copy to Angela on Friday. In one place, things about health and career, if there's a conflict or some concerns, it comes to the board, okay? It doesn't say whether the board then has to, by motion, resolve the issue that comes to the board. Then in the next section, it talks about things, if there's concerns, coming forward to the superintendent and a process that, an ad hoc committee being formed, and then it going to the superintendent for a decision. And there's kind of a clear decision-making process in there, whereas the piece that mentions the board isn't. And we spent a lot of time talking about the difference between governance and operational. And so if one section is operational and resides with an ad hoc committee that the superintendent then looks at the work of that ad hoc committee and says yea or nay to.
So I guess the question I'm asking you, is it in the actual policy or is it in the regulations that we want to change? Because if it's in the policy, I'm not willing to vote on it tonight and then redo the policy. But if it's regulations, we can move the policy and we can just
No,
look at.
right now, it's in the policy, and I guess because we'd had those questions about governance and operations, when I went through it on Friday, all of a sudden I was going, so I went upstairs and I said to Angela, here's this one, I'm worried about these things in it, and we talked about the fact that we put it out there for notice of motion, the concept would be that we could pass it and then have it come back to policy committee was what we talked about. But if that's not the will of the group, I don't know if it's just my perception that it's an issue or if other people see the same thing. Bill?
So I'll put forward a motion that letter C comes for a second reading at the next meeting.
Yeah, I think that's probably.
Postpone it.
You and I didn't have a chance to talk about that. I don't know if you've seen what it is I'm
No,
talking
it's
about.
fine. Normally by this point,
I know.
those questions, and so I have no issue with not just leaving it and not passing it tonight, but normally the process would be that those questions or discussions would happen prior to tonight.
And I agree, and that was
Yeah.
why I went and said to Angela, but I'd not really looked at it with that lens, and all of a sudden I went, I don't know if this is what
Just
you
leave it.
want.
I just need
And
a
see,
second.
what I would have done, Helen, is because you have questions on it, we don't have to ask for a seconder tonight. We
Okay.
can refer it back to the policy committee.
Okay, so that was kind of what Angela and I talked about, but.
And then we can bring it back to the policy committee, and then the next board meeting.
Pass it or.
Well, you don't have to
amendment.
commit to when it comes back.
No, but just to
send
bring
it
it
back
back.
to the policy
So
committee
we're-
meeting. and-
Yeah.
So we're not going to second that one, it's gonna go back to the policy committee.
and then.
Yeah.
Because that's what we would do if it was an outside person that brought something up. We'd send it back to the policy committee.
Okay.
So that would be what I would say to do.
An outside person? So first of
For a
all,
notice of motion, for example, if we get comments on a notice of motion and we want to discuss it again, because we've got feedback, it goes back to policy committee.
Like
You
accommodation.
don't
Like
pass
we
it
just
that
did with
night.
accommodations.
right,
But it wouldn't come to the table if we didn't pass the timeline for the notice of motions to bring anything back to the table. So this one
So
passed.
it would come back, but now we have another concern about, like,
That's fine. Then we just.
we certainly can, and we can do that. It's, as a corporate board, it's either someone seconds it or not. And so a trustee, so Helen is a trustee, she can express a question or concern around
Right.
that. The board can still decide to second it or not. We're happy to go back. I just want to stick to a process that's supposed to be
Well, and
followed.
I did try and sort of clarify, I really didn't, when we looked at it before, I think because of that initial policy that I was historically part of, I understood why it was there. And then all of a sudden, that concept of governance and operation came.
so another way we could do it is we could just defeat this motion and send it back to,
So
because we have a motion on the floor.
I don't know if we can defeat it. Is it that we're still on 3003, correct?
Yes, we are.
Yeah, I don't know if we can defeat it and bring it back because we also have a policy about the timeline about bringing policies back. So whoever, I don't know who you agreed to second it, but that person can rescind the seconding and we can just drop it and move forward.
Bill?
Okay, I was gonna say, can I not just get a motion or a seconder for my motion to bring it forward at a later date?
Yeah.
We have
Yeah.
to do the first motion.
We have to deal with the first motion.
So who seconded it?
Okay, so David is rescinding his second, so we don't have a seconder for the motion. So that allows it to go back to policy committee without another motion.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Right, 2003 international travel. We have a moved by Evan that the Board of Education adopt policy 2003.
How about Aaron or trustee Evans? I am paying attention.
Trustee Evans, okay, trustee.
Now your mic is on.
Can we have a seconder for that motion now that I'm sweating?
That's okay.
Seconded by Ida. All right, calling the question, all in favor? Okay, moving on to reports. There is really nothing from the BCSTA at this moment that I'm aware of. Aaron, what about you? Okay,
Nothing that I'm aware of.
BCPC? Nothing. Board Pro D Committee, just look at all those wonderful options that are there in the calendar for now. And we'll talk further about that. Item number 12, correspondence, Jennifer Whiteside. I asked for the letter from the minister about the affordability money just be attached for information, and that was attached to the agenda. I don't believe we have any unfinished business, and I don't think we have any new business tonight. So I'm going to ask for a PRNT update from Michelle.
Thank you. So welcome back to another busy school year. Thanks for sharing your summers. I appreciate hearing all of that. I just know we're going to have another busy fall. Not sure where exactly we're going to land with provincial bargaining, but hopefully we'll all be okay at the end.
Promising.
Right, and the HEU, I think, as well, is that right? Yeah, a couple of good things happened there, for sure. I was in Vancouver when the funeral for Ernie took place. And so, Leah, I just want to acknowledge, because he was superintendent here, he actually hired me in 1989. Before, I think that was the last thing that he did before he retired in July of 1989. Just on behalf of the PRNTA, our condolences to your family, and I did email Anita, but I just wanted to acknowledge at the board meeting, because he had been an important part of School District 60 for many, many years, so I'm really saddened, so just that you know that we're thinking about you for sure. The other thing that I would like to mention is that, and I'm not sure if I can do this before the 15th, so maybe Leah, don't write this down, is that we are going to have a meet and greet at the union office for all the trustees that are running, and we'll have an invitation to you. It'll probably be at the end of the month, I think on a Wednesday, so it'll be like from 5 to 7, so that you can have like a bit of time after work or whatever. But I think it's important that teachers really get to know. I know there's incumbents, or you've already are in, I guess, is that in some of the zones, but for sure in one of those town zones, I think we need to have a meet and greet. So yeah, looks like we're going to be busy for the next few weeks, everybody.
What date?
You know what, David,
We'll send it out if you.
we're going to send it out. I have a tentative date because the tentative date is September 28th, the Wednesday. How does that sit with people? We're thinking from 5 to 7, but, and I know that the city is also planning some things for the council and for the mayor. And I hope that we don't conflict with that as well, but.
There's a third more important, I think.
Pardon me?
I think there's the 3rd and 4th
Okay, it's
October.
in October. Okay, so we might be a bit
Okay.
early. But yeah, so wishing everybody, happy September. And I'm very concerned about what's happening in Hudson's Hope, just so that, reached out to teachers there and to Nicole as well. And we just hope that everything will be okay. I'm very worried for that. And that's all that I have.
Thank you very much, Michelle. We don't have anybody here from CUPE tonight.
Sorry, Helen. Can I just add something? I went to the thing that the PRNTA did the last time with the elections, and it was really, really good. Like, there wasn't a huge, big turnout, but you know what? The people that did show up, the questions were really excellent. And even as an incumbent, it was definitely worth my time to go. And I think everybody should go, because you really do hear, directly from the teachers. They'll talk to you anyway throughout the years, but I don't know. I just think it's really, it was just a good function. So thanks, Michelle, for doing that again for everybody.
Thanks, Trustee Evans. Thanks.
Right. I don't think we have any questions from the press and the public. And we didn't finish our in-camera. We had to suspend our in-camera, so we'll go back now. And we'll adjourn the regular meeting and then move back to the in-camera. So can I have a mover and a seconder for adjournment? Moved by Bill, seconded by Aaron. All in favor?
Helen,
We
we don't adjourn it.
until after the in-camera?
Yeah, because we have to come back and.
All right, because
Suspend
there
it.
may be motion.
We suspend it till we're done, or.
Okay, we suspend it till we're done. Okay,
Recording or?
we're just gonna turn the recording off now. So Aaron, we're just gonna turn the recording off. I don't think that'll